Hey guys, so I've been wanting to talk for a while. I keep trying to talk about this stuff, and there's so many different elements to this thing that it's hard to pick a place to start, and it's hard to tell. My channel's kind of entirely about this, so this isn't going to surprise anybody. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they get into the manifesting, really when they're exposed to like certain elements of the manifesting community, really the YouTube and Reddit manifesting community. One of the biggest mistakes I think that people make is they start thinking that everything in life that was good and true and everything before no longer applies. It's like there's a suspension, or there's an idea that all wasn't real, or that there was no value there, or nothing to be gotten from that. And in my experience, it couldn't be more opposite. The manifesting ideas, the understanding of the power that we have as creators is the thing that was missing. It wasn't the whole thing. It was the missing key. It was the key that makes this whole experience work for people. Not something that negates the whole experience in its entirety, which I think, it's how people treat it. They start treating stuff like morality and discipline and other things that, have led to hard-fought, hard-won success for people like it no longer matters, or it was never relevant or valuable. And, other things like the idea that you should take care of your body, or the idea of nutrition mattering, or, just anything like that. Like it no longer makes any difference. And, whatever. I mean, people come to their experiential conclusions when they come to them, and that's all fine and good and everything. And I'm one of those people who certainly has had to learn many things the hard way by being hard-headed about things, especially in my 20s. So, no judgment. But for some people out there, you can learn from other people's mistakes or other people's experience, or, and you can just take that into your arsenal on faith or because it makes sense to you. And then you don't have to go through the actual experience that proves it to you. And that to me is like a superpower. If you can do that, and you are able to, sort of be able to discern when you need to just go with your own feeling about something, or when you can take somebody else's word for something, it's a superpower. And I think the way that you get good at that is by getting really in touch with the sensations in your body, specifically in your gut. This has been something that has been being more and more fine-tuned for me. Paying more attention to how something makes me feel, down to the smallest things. Like in my business, this is just proven over and over to me. In my business, I have to come up with advertising every single day. I could farm that out, but whatever. I do a lot of jobs for my business still myself. And I do all of the advertising, all the copywriting. I come up with all the deals, just all of that. And I'm pretty good at it. My business is pretty successful, but regularly I will set something up. And just to give you a little background, like this is just an example this is just sort of like a proof of this feeling thing for me. Basically, if you buy a deal from me, it's always the exact same deal for me. So I'm coming up with a million different ways all the time to make $8 on the product that I sell. I sell, thousands of these things a year. And what I want to make on each one is $8. So I find all different kinds of ways to make $8. By lowering the retail price, putting it on sale for $8 over what I paid for it, for, giving away something that costs me, the difference between the wholesale price that I paid for something and what I put it on sale for, that is $8 less than retail, if that makes sense. So like, you know, I'll have an item that costs me $10 to give away, and I will then, you know, price the product $18 over the wholesale price I paid for it, so I can make my net $8. I'm just coming up with these deals all day long. Free things that, you know, are worth X amount of money plus $8. You know, will people buy this or not? And so it's always the same value. You know, it's always the same value. Like if you're buying something from me, you get something free. It is worth that exact formula. I hope that made any sense. Sometimes I have a combo of, you know, I have a deal. So a specific product plus a specific promo type giveaway item, it equals $8 in profit for me. But I just look at this and I just think, I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this, even though it is the exact same value to my customer, you know, in reality. I'll just have a bad feeling in my stomach. They're not going to perceive this as being a good deal. I get that feeling in my stomach. Do I act on it? No. I have gone through, I mean, I do sometimes, but I've just over and over again, because sometimes, you know, it's like I just can't come up with something. It's like, this is the best I can do today. I don't feel good about this, you know, and it ends up playing out. It's right every time. I could spend a little more time coming up with something different that I felt good about. I often don't do that, but more and more I'm starting to be aware of and notice that anytime something doesn't work out, I always had a feeling preceding it that indicated that, whether it was faint or just really strong. You know, if it's really strong, it's harder to ignore. Maybe I act on it more then. But if you start paying attention to stuff like that, and you're doing things all day long, you're making decisions all day long, where you have an opportunity to observe how you feel about the decisions you're making. And I don't mean emotionally. This is a really important distinction, because we talk about feelings and it's like there's not the right language to talk about this stuff so that it makes sense to a lot of people. It's just like, is a sensation telling you yes, or is a sensation telling you no? What is that feeling that you have going on in you? And getting in touch with that more and more. I mean, it makes life a lot easier more and more. The easier, you know, things get easier. Decisions get easier and produce the outcome that you're looking for a lot more when you start to only go with stuff that makes you, you know, gives you that feeling of certainty. And that feeling of certainty, incidentally, is also the type of feeling that if you feel it about something that you want to manifest, if you manufacture it, if you copy and paste it, if you learn what that feels like, you just copy and paste it onto something that you want to manifest. And then it leads you in the right direction more often than not. But anyway, so back to the original topic of this video, which is that if you can just kind of like, I was saying, you know, if you can get good at taking other people's experience as your own, this isn't the topic of the video, that's what I was saying, then, you know, you can bypass a lot of experiential learning that, you know, just kind of uses up time and energy that you could spend somewhere else. And so the whole point here is that one of the mistakes people are making in this community are putting aside the body, putting aside good sense, putting aside, you know, other people's wisdom. Of course, some wisdom is shit. Some things need to go, but there's a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of good stuff that you've learned in your life. And it's not just something to throw by the wayside. Taking care of your body and paying attention to certain things like your diet, especially, because your gut microbiome, I wish I knew more about this. I'm learning more about this. I would love eventually to be able to speak intelligently about this. In the meantime, just listen to Andrew Huberman about it. Your gut biome influences your thinking to a degree that we're not even really fully aware of yet. I mean, it can make you want things. It can make you feel depressed. All of that. If you're eating a shit diet, you've got work to do here in the 3D world before you know, can draw a lot of conclusions about what you want in the world. There are a lot of things, and your sleep. I talked about this on a video earlier this year. I have been on a quest since October to improve my sleep quality, because through a series of events that were manifested, I became aware that some of the things I was doing in my, day-to-day life were not as good as I thought they were. They were not as effective as they weren't producing the result that I thought they were, thereby disproving the idea that just because you think something is happening, that it is. One of the dumbest premises I've ever heard in my life. Anybody can disprove that in like 30 seconds. The difference in how you feel and approach everything in your life, if you're getting good sleep, adequate sleep, restorative sleep, this has been my issue. And I finally resolved this. I have this pattern, and I have data on my Fitbit from 10 years. I had an old Fitbit 10 years ago. So I could see clearly that this has been a pattern for me for over a decade. And it's kind of because of the work that I do. I have my own business, and so it's required a lot of work for the last 10 years. But I have this pattern of getting 5 hours of sleep, five, because I would wake up, I had stuff I needed to do, and I couldn't fall asleep at night because, for a variety of reasons. Anyway. And then I would have like a night of sleep that I would take a Benadryl or something and sleep for like 10 hours. It would be a great night of sleep. And the following night, the whole cycle would start all over again, because following this Benadryl night of sleep, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep until like 3 a.m. the next night. And then I would wake up early at 6 or 7, no sleep. And this just perpetuated up until literally like a week ago. I just decided I'm not taking any Benadryl anymore. I'm not going to do this thing anymore. I'm just going to get up every day at the same time, and I'm going to make sure that I'm ready to go to bed when I'm tired, rather than like just staying awake for, it's like this little kid urge to stay awake past your bedtime that I'm still dealing with at 45. And, I'll just be ready to get in bed when I'm tired. And it took about 2 weeks of just being tired before it started to work. Before I started getting tired at like 8:30, and then naturally getting on this cycle of waking up at 5 or 5:30, which is the ideal time for me to wake up. And it is so great being awake that early. You get so much done. It's amazing. But my sleep has started to improve. And this Fitbit has also alerted me to the fact that when I eat garbage late at night for me. So if I eat garbage at like 6 o'clock and then I go to bed at 8:30, my heart rate is too high for like most of the night, which heavily affects the benefits of sleep. And so these little things, they're relevant. They don't cease to exist just because you heard that manifesting is real. And a lot of people make this mistake. And it's the same thing with a lot of other things. I hope to be able to talk about this soon, because I have run into something that I think is super relevant for me. It's been one of the most illuminating things for me in my life. I'm on this constant quest to understand myself. This whole thing, to me, is becoming more and more of a game. It's got to be a simulation. This has to be some sort of a hyper real video game type of situation, or something that could very easily be compared to a video game. It's like a never ending passionate quest to understand what's going on here, which I love. I mean, I love, this is like a big puzzle, and I love puzzles. So one thing that I noticed over the last year that led me to, and this is the way things manifest. It's really interesting. So, this last year, finally, I've noticed that I have a cycle that I seem to go through, one of many, but in particular, I have this one cycle with work and this YouTube channel now. And I was fighting it for such a long time. At some point in the early spring, my interest in my business starts to go away. And I'm not at a point anymore where that matters. In the past, I've had to fight through it, and it was pretty miserable just because I wanted to continue to make money and all of that. I didn't want to leave a bunch of money on the table by working less. I don't really have to make that choice now because other people can work and do, my job for the most part for me. But I noticed that, like clockwork, it's like a switch is flipped sometime in October, November, that time of year. And I suddenly become very interested in working in my business again. It seems to be related to the seasons, I think. And this year, my interest in my business dropped way earlier, and it has been like 70 degrees where I live in February and March. This is disturbing. It has been like summer weather here on and off for the last couple of weeks. So I seem to have this cycle that I go through, and people in the manifesting community might say, that's because you believe that that's the way it is. You know what? You can't spend your whole life micromanaging this interface in which we're having this experience. There are some things that you just have to kind of go with due to lack of time and brain space and all of that. And so, learning to understand the cycles that are present helps you understand yourself. It explains your behavior to you. It makes things really demystified. And this is another one of the things that I feel like this sort of shit manifestation community that's cropped up is heavily discouraging people from doing, heavily discouraging people from trying to understand the nature of the world, the nature of this illusion. If you're going to be here, it's kind of important to do that, I think. Or it's, at least it helps. It helps you, I don't know. I think people are coming to this manifesting stuff because they're confused and unsuccessful and probably in kind of a shitty place a lot of the time. Like, not too many people, I think, stumble on this because they're just genuinely interested in it. Of course, there's a subset of people for whom that's the case, but there's a lot of, I don't know. I think for a lot of people who have been exposed to like the Neville Goddard community on Reddit or a million channels that have cropped up, out of opportunity to make money over the last, 5-6 years, I think there's a lot of unlearning that's going to need to be done. And because a lot of stuff has been pushing you in the opposite direction of what's going to help you. And so the thing that when I was saying I want to be able to talk about this intelligently, I noticed this cycle play out for the first time. I finally, I've seen it a bunch of times, but I didn't believe in it enough to think, okay, this is something I can rely on. This cycle is something that I'm sure enough will play out that I don't have to worry about it when I lose interest in my bit. There's always the worry where I'm like, well, I got to force myself to do this because I can't just not do it. I can't just move on to some other thing. But it never works. It always wins out. The cycle always wins out. And no matter what, I end up just saying, you know what? I just don't want to be here when I'm here. I have this fight or flight sensation. I got to leave sometime in April, May, June. I was talking about this last year. And then it comes back. And so it's nothing to worry about, not to mention that I just paid my taxes, and I'm at the point now where for me to worry about money or have any anxiety about anything relating to my business is completely stupid. I couldn't have said that in the past. I can't, to expend any more energy on anxiety or worries about money is just dumb. So this sort of led me, this observation of this cycle, and that it repeated yet again. And, it's pretty reliable at this point. My fiance has said, I've seen this play out now multiple times. He's been around since 2020. So he's seen this every single year. So what year are we in? So for four years, he's seen this cycle happen. Out of nowhere, I think maybe 3 or 4 months ago, my friend, my ex, who I own my business with, sent me a link to a video. that he had just, I don't know how he ended up listening to it. He kind of lost interest in it quickly. Must have just heard something interesting in the beginning, or I don't know. He sent me this video that sparked this intense, that first of all, almost immediately improved. Resolved a bunch of sort of nagging thoughts that were just in my head forever. This video, I'll link to this video below actually, and I've been listening to all kinds of stuff from one of the one author who's still alive. This book, this video, whatever, discusses the cycle of generations and how the cycles are predictable and they have the same characteristics. And for like the decade when I was 31 to 41, I was sort of in a cave working on my business, or, for most of that time. And through that time, I was thinking a lot about how things work and everything, and how things in society were developing, and the generations that came after me were changing things, with like the woke culture coming up. And my mom was a school teacher. She was a 5th grade teacher until she retired like 10, 12 years ago. And, I'd hear things from her about how things had shifted, how a lot of things were now her fault, according to like the parents and the administration and everything. The teachers, the role of the teacher had changed. Kids were being really coddled in a way that my generation wasn't. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And there was this saying that I heard at some point, which was, strong men make good times make weak men make bad times make strong men. And so I've always thought of that and how that makes perfect sense. And it just so happens that is basically, it's sort of in a nutshell, in a way. It's not exactly this theory, but it kind of goes exactly with I never thought of it as generations. I thought of it more as, time periods and how they influenced the people in them, which is kind of the same thing. But it turns out that that's basically this generation theory, that, every set of 4 generations sort of goes through that iteration, through that cycle. And what was really interesting to me was listening to the specifics of the last 80 years of generations. And it basically exactly described my grandparents, my parents, my generation, and, like my niece's generation. And so many things. It's crazy. So much. I didn't even realize it until I was listening to this YouTube video. I'll link it below. I didn't realize how much of the stuff that I experienced that was highly predictable and, that would happen based on my parents' generation raising my generation. How much of what I experienced I took personally and shaped the way I felt about myself and myself in relation to my parents. It's crazy. If you're not looking, there's this idea in the manifestation community that all you do is just force different thoughts onto yourself and it resolves everything. Or just repeat something over and over again and it'll change things. When this deep understanding, or even, it's not even really a deep just an understanding of why things were the way they were, especially it just resolves, things just float away. That's the best way I can think of to say it. And it's a shift in perspective that causes this. And sometimes that just comes with age. A lot of times it comes with, a pursuit of understanding, I think. And that's what I experienced, in this, I want to understand the cycles, that's what started this. And then what manifested from that desire was this video showing up through my ex, who could not give a shit. I've tried to talk to him about this. He does not care. I've tried to talk to other people about this, and they don't seem to care. You probably don't care. But I'm going to, it's so profound. Like, my generation, just to, give you some context or whatever, as you probably know, if you're a Gen Xer, then you probably know an American. However, most of my YouTube channel is younger than me. I think most of it, it's like 25 to 45. So people around my age, but I'm sort of at the tail end of Gen X and the tail end of the generation that was like, run wild. It's like, it's funny. He describes it as like kind of nobody giving a shit about us. And that is, when I look at like how I would parent a child, not that I think it was wrong or right. I actually value my childhood that was sort of just like nobody gave a shit. But when I think about how I would raise a child, like how I think I never wanted to have kids because I just felt like I would be so overprotective. That's how my generation ended up raising kids. And that's a result of the way we were raised. And looking at the things that didn't feel good about that and the errors that we could see that our parents couldn't see, and correcting that or attempting to correct that, overcorrecting that, in my opinion. I just didn't want to have, this is for so many reasons I didn't want to have kids, and that was one of them. Whenever I thought about the amount of anxiety, and my ex also says this, the amount of anxiety and stress that I would have over having a kid and worrying about what was going to happen to them and everything, I just think, God, why didn't my parents give a shit about me? I remember, thinking this over the years, not quite placing myself into this huge group of people whose parents were exactly the same way. And listening to this and listening to how my parents became the way they were based on this generational theory and, all of the influencing factors that caused their parents to be the way they were. And the fact that this repeats was very therapeutic for me. It just lightened the load so much. When I think about, and by the way, of course, this doesn't apply to everybody in a generation. It just applies to the majority. A large group of the generation will just kind of like turn out the same way. Of course, people in my generation had parents who didn't behave that way. In fact, I was thinking about it. I could remember some kids in my grade or whatever who had parents that were like very overprotective, and we all thought they were weird and that those parents were weird because it just wasn't normal for most of us. But anyway, it not only helped me to understand where my parents were coming from and to kind of like let go of some of the, I don't know what the word is, resentment, maybe blame. I don't know. Just sort of like, what the hell was your problem? There are certain things I've thought about my parents, and the way I was raised, a lot of things, things that have caused problems for me now as a middle-aged adult. I think, God, why didn't they just do this differently? Because this is the cycle. It repeats over and over again. It's never perfect. It's predictable. And so it kind of, I think, helps you to release certain feelings about things. And the more of those you get rid of, the easier it is to create the life that you want and to experience the life you have right now in a more positive way. I mean, I have things I want to change, but yesterday I was saying to my ex, like, I have to observe this because I'm so happy today. I got a great night of sleep on Friday night. Great night of sleep. Yesterday, all day, I just felt this sense of well-being. It was effortless. I didn't have to try to do it. I just felt so good all day yesterday. And I was like, I have to start observing this when it's happening, because, this isn't something that I experience frequently, enough. It's starting to happen more and more just randomly as all of these factors are coming together. All of these things I've intentionally manifested, all of these efforts that I've made to understand what's going on with me physically. If you are experiencing depression, that is one of the most vicious cycles I could think of, because it's like one thing builds on another, and you're definitely being affected. You know, you're probably not taking care of yourself physically, and the more that happens, it just built, you know, this is especially pertinent for people who are suffering from depression. You can start to do some things, start taking care of yourself. You can start doing things that are going to help you dig out of that. As all these things have been coming together, you know, I'm starting to really experience the benefits of all the things that I did in my 30s. And now I'm starting to experience the benefits of these shift, you know, realizing that my sleep was shit. And it's been being shown to me over and over again, like certain foods affect my sleep. It's very obvious now. As this stuff is coming together, it's becoming more and more effortless. And, you know, just leaving the world behind, that's not the point of this. That's not the point of this ability that you have. It's not the point of understanding that you're very powerfully influencing the things that are created in your life. I don't think, unless it's your personal, you know, you're one of the few people whose real aim is like escape and enlightenment or whatever. If you're still interested in material creations and experiencing this material world, which, I mean, I don't know, I am. And, you know, I don't have a lot of desires that I want to manifest, like, physical manifestations, but experiencing this material world is something I want. You know, if you're like me and like most of us, all of this stuff is still relevant. Understanding what influenced you can be very helpful. Understanding yourself, I mean, it's at the heart of all of it. The world is your mirror. The more you understand yourself and how you work, the easier it is to change things, and the easier it is to just sort of be unburdened, in my opinion. Anyway, so I don't know if it's gonna, you know, what's influenced me to feel different obviously isn't going to necessarily be what influences you to feel different. But this was just another, in my opinion, another really kind of mundane thing. Understanding the way generations have shaped attitudes. And, you know, this also, by the way, helped me understand myself. The Gen X generation in the United States, anyway, I don't know if this is applicable. I guess it's also kind of, I don't know if it's the same in Europe, but they studied Europe, European history, and found that this was true for the cycle, you know, everything, all, you know, history going back like 500 years in Europe, and probably is true everywhere else too, at least for the generational cycle. Gen Xers are a certain type, a certain breed, and I am probably the poster child for a lot of this stuff. You know, very, very like individual, very do it yourself, very, you know, like I built my business and driven by success and stuff like that. This isn't just me. Like, that's not, it was kind of humbling in a way. Anything that I thought about this about myself that was like, this is unique to me, or this makes me special or something. This was something that was absorbed from my environment. I have my environment to thank. So, you know, the very things that made me feel maybe like, why didn't my parents care about me more? Or like, you know, things that made me feel in relation to them maybe lesser than or not good enough, or, you know, the things that I've dealt with 4 or 5 years ago, those were big issues for me when I was approaching 40. You know, I went through a lot of soul searching about my dad, and at that age of 40, being, you know, being near the age that he was when a lot of pivotal events happened in my life, I was able to see a lot differently, you know, from the perspective of a child, and the beliefs I formed about myself from those events, like when he left, my parents divorced. Being able to see it from 40, I realized I drew a lot of conclusions about myself in relation to him that could not possibly be true. As I'm looking at this from my 40-year-old perspective, that's not what happened. It wasn't because of me. You know, I couldn't have changed it, was a big one, you know. Nothing I could have done was going to, you know, keep that divorce from happening and keep him from moving further away and our relationship becoming even more distant. You know, the relationship being distant in the first place largely because of his influences, his experiences in life, his generation. I wish I had had this video then, because it would have been even more profound. But, you know, those things that influenced me negatively, that now I've worked out or I'm working out, there's a flip side to that. There's a major benefit to all of those things that I experienced. It made me into this person that was able to more easily, I think, achieve a whole bunch of stuff and have a whole bunch of stuff that people want. So that also feels really good to understand, you know. I don't know. It was a really positive thing for me to start to understand this stuff. And of course, understanding that I go through this cycle where I want to be focused in this one area that's important to me, and then, you know, it starts to wane and I want to be focused in another area that's important to me, you know, self-exploration, and apparently talking about it on YouTube, or at least reading about it by myself, or, you know, just another pursuit, something more about me or whatever, and less about success or creating wealth or whatever. Understanding that that's something that's kind of predictable and that I don't have to really worry about has allowed me to enjoy both of those things so much more. This year, as I was working, I worked, you know, this is probably the least I've ever worked in December, January, and February, which was awesome. I enjoyed it so much more because I was like, I know that in a few months I'm not going to be doing this anymore and things are going to change. You know, I would be at work at like 9 o'clock and I was like, God, I can't imagine wanting to have gone home earlier than this. What the hell would I be doing at home? You know, I'd just be like watching TV. And I was just like, how am I going to go back to wanting to leave work at 2:30? It just happened. It just happened. The weather got nice. So my mind just started shit, you know, I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to try to control it. Didn't have to make a plan for it. Any of that. So, yeah, this is just, I don't know if I'm trying to just, you know, I think I just wanted to talk about my experience with how that stuff played out. And I'm still listening to all this stuff that this guy is talking about. His name's Neil Howe, Howe. He's on a lot of podcasts and stuff. But the video that was interesting, I'll link below, that was somebody else, talking about whatever. Maybe you'll find it interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm trying to urge people to do this or what, but it was such an interesting experience for me to go through this, and to just the feeling when I realized that my parents were just like, basically they had little personal input into the way they turned out. Like, of course they could have, if they had the right understanding or something had happened to make them realize, I don't know. They basically just kind of autopiloted. When I realized that there was nothing really personal there, and they were just, you know, that their parenting style was a natural result of the way they were raised and the culture that they experienced and the experiences that happened during that time. I literally, immediately, when I put this together, in a real way, it just, these feelings just floated away about my childhood. All this shit comes from childhood. It just floated away. And I was like, I don't know. I've been lighter ever since then. Anyway, I hope it provides some benefit to somebody out there. And I will link to that video below. It's like 2.5 hours long. So yeah. Anyway, have a great day.